Hi, everyone. My name is Jim Rebello. I'm one of the specialty strategy leads here at Magellan RX Management and Prime Therapeutics. Today, I have the privilege of hosting our Beyond the Script show. Today's episode is all about combating specialty drug challenges. So let's start with some quick intros from our guests and my colleagues, Steve, Kristen, and Hetta. Steve, start with you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Jim. Appreciate it. So, my name's Steve Cutts. I'm Senior Vice President and Market General Manager overseeing our specialty drug management strategy here at Prime Therapeutics across both the pharmacy and medical benefits. I am a pharmacist by training. I've been in this role now for just about 6 years and have been lucky enough to work for the Prime and Magellan family of companies now for approaching 15 years. Heta?
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. I'm Heta Makanji, Vice President of Specialty Clinical Strategy and Innovation. As for my background, I started my pharmacy career as a pharmacist at a small startup company called CDMI, based out of Newport, Rhode Island. That's where I helped to innovate a lot of the new specialty clinical programs focused on HIV and immune globulin therapy. And then now, through various acquisitions similar to Steve, Jim, and Kristen, I've been with Prime MRX for 12 years, and I lead product innovation and clinical program initiatives within the specialty division. Kristen?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Reimers, clinical pharmacist and Senior Vice President of Specialty Clinical Solutions at Prime MRX. I've been with the company for 11 years and manage our medical pharmacy solutions. And I'm responsible for driving the clinical strategies within all of our medical pharmacy programs. And since I'm last, I'm going to share a fun fact that when I was logging on this morning, I noticed that today was National Carpe Diem Day. So I hope that all of you are able to seize the day today and do something that makes you happy.
Thanks, Kristen, for the fun fact there. Thank you all for the intros. I didn't expand on my background at all. I won't give any interesting one or career interesting ones, but I've spoken at a number of industry events over the years and have been on plenty of webinars and so on. But I think this is the first time I'm hosting an online show since my days at the University of Rhode Island, where I hosted the not so famous JC and Reb show on Studio B. So I don't know if that's a thing over there still, but I hope it still is because I feel like it's prepared me for today. So, anyways, excuse my rust. So now I've broken the ice and maybe more there. Let's start to dive in. But I'll give a quick background on the specialty landscape before I turn it over to our guests here. So, as many of you know and have heard, I'm sure over and over again over the years, is that specialty medicines now represent more than half of drug costs in the United States, and just 2% of patients account for these costs. Now, it's not as well known is that half of the specialty spend actually occurs on the medical benefit. And many of these therapies are for orphan conditions. In fact, more than 60% of drug approvals last year were for therapies in the rare and ultra rare disease space. Now, lastly, on a related note, the boom of cell and gene therapies, or CGTs, means more $1 million plus therapies are in the pipeline. And while they're promising, these novel, in some cases curative therapies may require new payment models to boost access and improve affordability, which continue to be top concerns for patients and payers today. So each of our guests today are accountable for distinct areas across our specialty business, managing everything across clinical programs and innovation from A to Z or from ASP to zoledronic acid. So we'll hear from them about pressing issues facing payers and patients today and what we're doing to combat challenges unique to specialty. So we encourage you to submit questions as we go, and we'll try to answer them after our discussion. All right, so Steve, I'm going to start with you. So, as leader of our specialty division, can you speak to Prime and Magellan RX overarching approach to next generation specialty care and share the primary ways we're meeting the moment by help create optimal experience for patients and payers?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for that, Jim. And it's funny, in all the years that you and I have been working together, I didn't know that fun fact about you. So I'm hoping that somebody out there can rustle up maybe some recordings of you in action. I'd love to be able to witness those.
Though one of the three listeners hopefully did. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll have to do some investigative work there. But no, in all seriousness, thank you very much. It's great to be here talking about such an incredibly important topic. Jim, as you alluded to, we're very much in a new age of pharmacy and healthcare delivery period. This has been ushered in by truly unprecedented technological and scientific advances that have been driving really incredible innovation in treatment and overall improvements in patient outcomes. So this is really exciting, right? But on the flip side, it also creates and brings with it a lot of, I think, very interesting challenges, the likes of which many payers and our other providers have not necessarily been equipped to meet here in real time. So this changing landscape brings with it, I think, this incredible complexity, escalating costs, as we all know. You mentioned some of the statistics there around orphan drugs fueling the pipeline, the expense of these medications. But it also brings with it, I think, extensive opportunities to better coordinate overall patient care. Now, given this entire ecosystem, I don't think it's ever been more important before than it is now to meet the moment and really reimagine the role fundamentally of a PBM or a pharmacy benefit manager. And at Prime, that is really fundamentally our mission, which is to reimagine pharmacy management by delivering the care that we all want for our loved ones. So it's a very aspirational goal. So how exactly do you go about doing this? And it's multifocal. There's a lot of different pieces, but to me, central to this aim is really being aspirational and creating a much more streamlined patient and provider experience across the various points of interaction that we all have with the healthcare system. And they are multiple and incredibly complicated, as we all know. It's very challenging to navigate the healthcare ecosystem in today's society. Now, specialty drugs in particular, I think, really present a very unique and nuanced challenge in order to be able to do this and optimize that experience in a scalable and optimized way for a number of different reasons. But I think one of the really important ones is that they have a significant presence spanning across both the pharmacy and the medical drug benefits, as you mentioned. And each one of these benefits really operates in a fundamentally different way. I think these inherent differences and the complexities across everything from, differences in supply chain dynamics, how the drugs themselves are administered and reimbursed, they often manifest in very different experiences for both patients and providers and create really unique challenges as well for payers in order for them to better effectively manage trend while also keeping the ultimate goal in mind, which is ensuring patient access to these critically important therapies. Now, when you look throughout, I think the history of PBMs in particular, PBMs have been almost exclusively focused on supporting payers in managing specialty drugs on the pharmacy benefit, right? Not really surprising. It's quite literally in the name, pharmacy benefit management. But as you mentioned, Jim, we've seen a boom in medical specialty growth, now over 50% of overall specialty spend, and that trend is continuing to accelerate, driving this complexity. Now, this is really reflected and it's top of mind for payers across the country and key players in the healthcare ecosystem. And nearly all of my conversations that I've had with payers across the country lately, and frankly, I think this has been the case for the past few years, is that their real emphasis that they need solutions for and where they are really focusing is the holistic management of specialty drugs across both pharmacy and medical. The whole delineation between the pharmacy benefit and the medical benefit, I think in many ways, is increasingly being viewed as more of a somewhat arbitrary dividing line between where a PBM's responsibility starts and ultimately where it ends. And I'll give you an example. There's a number of different specialty drugs today that may start as an infused therapy on the medical benefit and then get switched over for continuation of therapy to the pharmacy benefit. In today's environment, just based on how providers and patients interact with the system, how the data in and of itself comes in differently, how claims are adjudicated, how these claims are paid for, there's all too often a very bifurcated experience in situations like these, created by inefficiencies and everything from utilization management, formulary design, patient support programs, and frankly, everything in between. So to me, what's really readily become apparent is that PBMs can and should be doing a whole heck of a lot more to offer both comprehensive and integrated solutions for managing specialty drugs across both pharmacy and medical benefits. That is really how we need to reimagine the role of a PBM, is moving beyond just the traditional pharmacy benefit and really aggressively and better managing medical drug spend overall.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. So let's move on to Kristen. So based on what Steve was saying, it's clear that medical pharmacy drug spend is a key concern for payers. And as a point of clarification, when we say medical pharmacy, we're referring to drug spend that occurs on the medical benefit side of things, typically provider administered therapies. So as we mentioned earlier, this is often underappreciated area of specialty despite making up half the spend. So Kristen, as one of the top experts in this nuanced space, can you share some of the complexities unique to medical benefit drug costs and speak to some solutions payers can implement.
Yes, definitely. So, medical pharmacy medications are therapies that are used to treat chronic, progressive, and unfortunately incurable medical conditions. Things like rheumatoid arthritis and multiple sclerosis, and even cancer. Treatments are often required to be given lifelong to keep the symptoms under control and the conditions under remission. Dosing is tailored uniquely to patients, so there's often a lot of complexity there, using patient body weight and body surface area, requiring loading doses initially to build up levels of those medications, and then transitioning over to maintenance doses where they are given less frequently and every few weeks. Typically, they can be used in combination as well as part of regimens, so that adds another layer of complexity. And they often require monitoring by providers to look for adverse reactions from these medications. These are not typically medications that you get from your local pharmacies. These are administered by providers in a physician's office, home infusion, or even a hospital outpatient setting. And these providers are billing these medications directly to the medical benefit, as you mentioned. So they're being billed like medical services. And they're also being reimbursed a little bit different from the health plans. They're using average sales price versus AWP or average wholesale price. And even the member cost share is very different. These are typically a percentage of the overall cost. So those are typically around 20%. So for a drug, for example, that is about $6,000 per dose, that's $1,200 per dose that the member's responsible for. If they're given that dose every 8 weeks, that's $7,200 a year. So there's affordability that's always a concern with some of these medications. Medical pharmacy is also a very important aspect of specialty because of its tremendous growth. Over the last 5 years, there's been a trend of about 28% in the overall cost of these medications. And this is largely due to utilization because of new products coming to market. Last year, the FDA approved 74 total FDA new drugs, and 50% of those, or 38, were drugs on the medical benefit. So a lot of growth there. And if you're interested in learning about more of these trends, we have about 50 pages of trends in our compiled in our medical pharmacy trend report. So I think there's going to be a link to that coming up in the chat. So please feel free to refer to that when that comes up. So in terms of the solutions we offer medical pharmacy solutions that are intentionally focused and designed on quality of care for the member, and also offer flexibility for health plans. Payers often come to us looking for solutions and different ways to manage therapy classes like oncology that are extremely complex. And we offer a variety of solutions, such as evidence-based policies that are vetted and reviewed through key specialty oncologists who are true experts in their field. We offer dosing guidelines that are focused on safety and designed to limit adverse reactions. And we also offer additional programs that help with eliminating waste within the system, and also designed to promote appropriate use of the oncology immunotherapies, which are the largest growing category in oncology. And as Steve mentioned, we're able to provide an integrated solution that is across both pharmacy and medical, looking at the oral oncology drugs, as well as the IV therapies and the supportive therapies if they may be needed for nausea or neutropenia, and looking at the patient holistically across all of the therapies that they may need. This approach extends across oncology to all other categories, things like the autoimmune category, rheumatoid arthritis that I mentioned before, or the GI diseases such as ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, as well as the rare and ultra-rare disease states, and even ophthalmic injections. We take that targeted approach for all of our solutions across each individual therapy. And then we combine that with things like claims editing and appropriate site of care management, as well as reimbursement strategies to offer a full approach at looking at overall spend and trend and managing these high cost therapies. And I know Jim mentioned cell and gene therapies. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention those. It's so exciting to see these new therapies come to market and offer options for patients that where they haven't had options before. But we've designed clinical management programs in collaboration with our plans, and we're also working directly with them to help improve accessibility and affordability of those high cost medications.
Thank you, Kristen. And like you referenced, if anyone's curious to see the check out our trend report, there will be a link in the chat there, and you can catch on the most recent one. We even go back in time, or all of our older publications are as well. Worth a read if you're a medical pharmacy nerds like us. So let's go to Hetta next. So Hetta, we've heard a lot about the dynamics of specialty and why it's such a critical area of focus. Now, can you speak to the need for innovation in this area and how your team works to tackle the constantly evolving challenges in specialty?
Sure. So, first, I'd love to say that innovation is a true passion for me and my team. And we're really fortunate to be a part of a company that also prioritizes it. Innovation, as you said, Jim, is critical for our organization in driving differentiation and also helping our customers manage specialty spend. Luckily, we're able to leverage our size to be nimble and agile, which in turn enables us to innovate even faster than many of the larger entities that are out there. As some of the, my colleagues, Kristen and Steve have already highlighted some of the impactful drug trends. Some of the key areas that they've already talked about, which are particularly important to really innovate in, is oncology, cell and gene therapy, and rare, ultra rare diseases. So let's focus in on oncology as an example. I know we've talked about a lot about trends and they're all super important, but in particular for oncology, over the past several years, there's been a significant breakthrough in immuno-oncology, small molecules, and targeted treatments, many of which now require some type of precision biomarker testing. In fact, just in 2023, nearly 50% of all newly FDA-approved therapies and 73% of oncology drugs in the pipeline have required some type of precision biomarker testing. Part of our innovation lifecycle is to stay ahead of these trends and develop products and services that provide additional value than some of the traditional management programs. Prime Magellan RX has developed a first-of-its-kind solution to optimize appropriate patients from getting biomarker testing and aligning the results to ensure that these patients are getting the most effective cancer regimens through a decision support tool that has been powered by Trapelo. And it's a very unique program that we have implemented recently. We've also implemented a lot of very unique oncology programs that have focused on driving physicians to safe, efficacious, and cost-effective regimens by taking a more in-depth look at some of the guidelines that are out there, including NCCN and evidence-based literature that we have out there. We're also continuously evaluating emerging areas. So, some that we've already talked a little bit about, but next generation risk management tools for cell and gene therapies, incorporating artificial intelligence where it's important, integrated medical and pharmacy benefit solutions that Steve and Krista have already mentioned, and then really diving deep into patient services and maybe even incorporating some digital services. We've been a company that has been hyper focused on listening to customer feedback. We also are monitoring drug trends as we've displayed today. And we also have embraced new technologies. And really the goal is to refine and enhance a lot of the product offerings that we're having to meet the evolving customer needs and to stay ahead of the specialty spend.
Great. Thank you, Hetta. Very insightful. So at this point, I think we can pivot over to our audience Q&A. Should have a few good questions here that we can hopefully squeeze in. So it looks like the first one's going to be for you, Hetta. So hopefully you got some water there quick. So As many of us mentioned, right, given the growth of extremely high cost medication, so like CGTs, for example, do we have anything specific that we do to help manage those types of therapies that are different from other specialty medications?
Yeah, definitely. So over the past 3 years, we've seen a significant growth in high cost therapy. I think there's been an estimated 200% growth in the past 3 years with medications that cost over $300,000 per patient per year. And it has been truly remarkable to see these advancements for patients, knowing that they are very challenging and complex areas. We've developed several programs to help manage these drugs. Our high cost therapy program is a program that we've recently developed and implemented. And it's an enhanced utilization management program that really requires each case to be reviewed by a specialty match physician who has the expertise in many of these complex disease states. The benefit of this program is that it allows treating providers to have access to specialty match physicians to do peer to peers and to have a conversation and a dialogue about that patient, and most importantly, to improve access to these medications for the right members.
Thanks, Etta. Steve, I'm going to give this next one over to you. So, are commercial and self funded employer plans covering gene therapy? And maybe you can kind of expand on that and just coverage challenges and novel approaches we've seen over the years that maybe would have been unheard of years before. We still have you, Steve?
Yep, I'm here. Apologies for that. My of course, little technical difficulties. What would a live stream be without a few technical difficulties here? But yeah, it's a great question overall, and I would say this space still continues to evolve, and these gene therapies, cell and gene therapies in particular, obviously present a lot of incredible innovations, but they come at a very significant cost, up in the multi millions of dollars. We are seeing, and again, in general, I think some robust coverage of a lot of these therapies, but the devil's in the details, right? Oftentimes, that you see self-funded groups and employers are relying primarily on having their reinsurance or as well as stop loss in the background to be able to help them afford some of these different coverages, which in and of itself is probably not a long-term solution. Commercial plans, we're also seeing some pretty good coverage across the board, depending on what the therapies are. That being said, there are also a number of groups that eliminate those from their overall benefit design, where they will not cover those individual therapies. So it really is all over the map. But I think core to this is ensuring that there's a robust clinical policy as well as the associated wraparound services and clinical interventions, such as the ones that Heta was describing, as well as Kristen, in that the reality of it is there are patients that are out there today that are appropriate candidates for these therapies. So it's imperative to ensure that they do have access and that they are also getting the support that they require when they are also put onto these individual therapies. And I think that really is where, in addition to the affordability equation, organizations like PBMs and other clinical organizations can come into play and be able to deliver incredible value into the overall ecosystem. So I would say, yes, there is pretty broad coverage of a lot of these different therapies. It does vary, obviously, depending upon the insurer, upon the individual groups. And there are a number of affordability mechanisms out there that are aimed at addressing this. But the reality of it is, this is still a large challenge that faces our healthcare ecosystem today. I mean, these gene therapies are only going to continue to proliferate, and just having stop loss and reinsurance as the primary vehicle to be able to address those is not a long-term sustainable solution.
Thanks, Steve. All right, we have time for one more question, and not surprisingly, we're still on the gene therapy high cost med topic here. So, Kristen, to round things out, we'll end the last question here with you. So, question was, what are the safeguards in place for gene therapy? Thinking like PA. So, I think this question is probably talking about what tools are payers using today regarding utilization management to making sure like the right patient's getting the right drug.
Yeah, that's a great question. So they are using prior authorization and utilization management. And we have a unique program where we incorporate physicians, as Heta was mentioning, as part of the overall review. So it starts with the clinical policies to ensure that they're following the appropriate guideline. We're using physicians who actually treat patients and have developed some of these guidelines to create the policies as well as review some of these cases and ensure that the right patient is getting the medication that they need, that it's at the most appropriate dose. And we've designed these programs to be in the inpatient setting because often a lot of these cell and gene therapies do require a lot of therapy done ahead of time. So that is all part of the process. And our payers work with the facilities that can administer these drugs and require this prior authorization to ensure it's a streamlined process for that member and that the appropriate clinical guidelines are being applied. So those patients that truly need the medications have access to get them.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. All right. Well, thanks to all three of you, Steve, Kristen, and Hetta, for sharing your perspectives and information today. And of course, thanks to the viewers for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to tune in for this discussion on the timely topic of specialty drug management. Have a great day, everyone.